Hello everyone, I'm Nabil Murad. In this training video, I'll show you how to create this beautiful dynamic flying balloon chart. I'll show you how to convert this dull list consisting of multiple columns and a huge number of rows into this flying balloon chart. In a previous tutorial, I showed you how to create the first part of this project by creating this pivot table with a calculated field, and it shows the percentage of profit generated for each month of the year. And then we continue building on this project. It is recommended that you watch the first part of this training video creating the pivot table. Now I would like to start by creating a scattered chart. So I'll go to the Insert tab. Notice I have one single cell selected outside my pivot table. And in the Charts group, on the Insert tab, I click on the down arrow for the scatter chart, and I'll be creating a bubble chart. It creates a placeholder for my chart. I need now to go and grab the data, so I can either right click and select data, or alternatively I can also click on select data on the design tab. In both cases, I will need to select my data by clicking on the add button, and this will open another dialog box, the edit series dialog box. What's the name of this series? The name of this series will be profit. So with my blinking cursor in the series name, I'll be clicking on profit. And then what are the values for this series? The values will be the percentage of profit, the calculated field that I created in my previous year. Look at that, it didn't delete what I have, so I have to hit the delete key before dragging. So I'll click and drag. Now it will work just fine. And then for the series bubble size, I'm going to delete whatever I have, and then I start typing 1, 1 12 times. I need to end up by having 12 1 for each of these months. So I'll hit OK, and look at that. I can click and drag, and I do have 12 times number 1, and I'm fine. I'll hit OK, and my bubble chart has been created. Let's apply some changes to this bubble chart. Number 1. I'll be clicking on the vertical axis, and when I click on the vertical axis, I want to make sure that everything is set to auto. So I'll be right clicking and select format axis, and when I click on format axis, I can expand, by the way, to see it says auto, and that's fine. This is exactly what I want. And then I'll close the format axis pane, and toward the upper right corner of the chart, I have the chart elements. If you click on this plus sign, this is the chart elements. I want to get rid of everything except only one single element. I'll uncheck axis, I'll uncheck the chart title, and I'll uncheck the grid lines, and I got rid of everything, but I would like to bring the error bars. What are the error bars? These are the horizontal and vertical lines you see inside each data point. And in fact, I don't need the horizontal one. So if I click on one of the horizontal lines inside each bubble, I'll be selecting all of them. I'm clicking inside the bubble trying to select the horizontal axis. If you have problems selecting them, you can click on error bars and then select more, and I have the horizontal error bar. Now I can see all of them selected because it says both, and I'm quite sure this is the horizontal error bar. You have a drop list up at the top. You can switch between the horizontal error bar for the x-axis and the vertical error bar for the y-axis. I would like to start with the horizontal one. With all of them selected, I'm going to hit the delete key to get rid of them, and I just have the vertical error bar. I'm going to select it one more time, click on the error bar, click on the little triangle to the right, and select more options, and now I have the vertical error bar. Let's make some adjustments for the vertical error bar. Because I have a minus and a plus sign, I just want to keep the minus sign, so I'll be selecting the minus sign. And when I scroll a little bit down, I would like to set the error amount to percentage, and I'll change the percentage to 100. And I'm done with the error bar. So when I hit enter, it creates this line that will make it look like a flying balloon. And then I'll be closing the format error bars, and I need to go and make some other changes in my data series. First of all, I would like to expand and resize my chart so as to make my bubbles a little bit bigger. I'm concerned a little bit with the bubbles touching each other, but we'll take care of that in the next step. In the next step, I would like to format my data points. So I'll be selecting one of the bubbles, one of the data points, and I'll open the Format Data Series. I'll do that either by right-clicking and select Format Data Series. Alternatively, you can hit the shortcut Control-1, and this will open the Format Data Series. With the Format Data Series selected, I'm going to reduce the size of the bubble a little bit. So the Scale Bubble Size 2, I'm going to make it, let's say 90, a little bit smaller, but now the bubbles are not touching each other. Look at that. I'm selecting the data points. These are the data series that I'm selecting. And here I'm on the tab Series Options in the Format Data Series pane. I'll switch to the leftmost tab, the Fill and Line, and when I click on this one, I'll expand the fill by clicking on the little triangle, and from here I'll be checking the box for Vary Colors by Point. Now I have each one of the balloons appearing as a different color, and that looks a lot better. I'm going to change the overall appearance of my chart by applying two steps. Step number 1 is to change it to a 3D bubble chart. I'll be changing the chart type. And to change the chart type, I'll click on Change Chart Type. And from here, from the Change Chart Type dialog box, I'll be selecting the rightmost one. From the XY scatter charts, this is a 3D bubble chart, and that will look a lot better. Now I would like to apply a style to my chart to change it completely, and to do that I'll go to the Design tab of the ribbon and click on the down arrow, and here I will have different styles and each one has a name. So I'll hover over the different styles and I'll go with this one, style number 5. Notice what happened when I applied this style, because the style comes with a bunch of formatting built inside that style. So it brings back the vertical axis and some of the grid lines inside my chart. I want to get rid of that. And this is the same step that we did at the beginning of this exercise. But when I'm applying a style, it brings back some of the elements I don't want to keep. So I'll click on the plus sign for the chart elements. I'll get rid of the axis. I'll get rid of the grid lines. And now I have my 3D bubble chart. Let's apply some formatting and add some data labels. To add the data labels, I'll have to click on the little triangle to the right side of data labels, and I'll go with more options for the data labels. Okay, what would you like to see for your data labels? Here by default, it brings the values for the percentage of profit, the calculated column in my original pivot table. But I would like to add the month name, so I'll check the box for Value from Cells. And this little dialog box pops up so that I can select what value do I want to see. So with my blinking cursor in this cell, I'll click and drag and select the range from A4 to A15, and I'll hit OK. And here you can see the months being added. But it's not really centered in the best position, so I'll scroll a little bit down. I'm still in the Format Data Labels pane, and I'll select this option, and I have my label centered inside each one of these bubbles. Let's close the Format Data Labels pane. And to make my label easier to read, I need to do a few things. I'll go to the Home tab. I can bump up the font, let's say to 10. I can make it bold. And it's not really black in color, so I'll click on the font color and I'll make it black, and now it's a lot easier to read. Should you wish to expand your chart horizontally to increase the spacing between the bubbles, that's also possible, and I can do that by dragging my chart a little bit horizontally. The result will differ according to your screen size and resolution. And by the way, I'm not really very happy with the bold formatting, so I'm going to get rid of that, and I'll decrease the font size to 9.5. That might look a little bit better based upon my settings. The next thing I would like to do is to format these lines, the vertical error bars. I selected them, and I'll open the Format Error Bar pane by using either the right-clicking or by hitting the shortcut Control 1. And here I want to go to the fill and end line. What we are formatting actually is the line itself. So with the line selected, I want to make sure that it's a solid line. I can select the color. If you wish to select a different color, you can do that. I'm selecting a dark blue color. But I'm going to increase the thickness of this line. I made it like 1.5. You can change the cap type. So I'll scroll down. You have different options. I can change the cap type and make it like round. And I'll scroll. Here I have the end arrow type. I'll click on that and I'll select the lower right option, oval arrow, and that will look better. When I deselect, look at my chart, I can see that it gives me the impression of a flying balloon. And this will be more emphasized when we start adding some interactivity to our chart. But before I go to the interactivity step, I would like to add a background to my chart. So I'll be selecting the chart area and I'll go to the Format tab. The chart area is kind of rectangle, so I want to remove the outline. So I'll click on the down arrow for Shape Outline and select No Outline. And let's go and grab a picture for the chart area. And I'll be grabbing a picture of a sky to give me the impression that the balloons are flying in the sky. I'm on the Format tab, click on the down arrow for the shape fill, and from here I'll be selecting a picture. I have two options for selecting the picture. Do you have a picture on your computer? You can go and get it by clicking on Browse for File. But I don't have a picture, so I'll search for that picture by typing a keyword. I typed sky, and this is a Bing search. When I click on magnifying lens, it gives me some options. I can select any one of these options. Let's go with this sky. If we don't like it, we can change it later. And it brings that sky and it puts it in the background of my chart. Let's add a little bit more artistic touches. So I'll be adding like a base here in my chart. I'll go to the Insert tab of the ribbon and I'll select a shape. And I'll be selecting this rectangle. And I'll click and drag to create a rectangle that will appear like kind of ground or grass below the balloons. I'm selecting the rectangle. And now I would like to change the fill color. I'll click on the down arrow for shape fill. I'll go and get a picture from the internet. So I'll search for grass this time. I can select any one of these. It doesn't really make a difference. I'm selecting this one. Let's apply an effect and change it. I want to tilt it. I'll be adding a 3D perspective effect by clicking on the down arrow for shape fill. I'll go down to 3D rotation and I'll be selecting a perspective. Actually, that's not exactly the angle that I want. I want to tilt it even more. So I'll click on Shape Effect one more time, go to 3D Rotation, and go to 3D Rotation Options. It will open a pane on the right side, and in this pane, I'll be modifying the perspective, and I'll increase the perspective. Look what happens in the background for this picture. I'll change the perspective to 120, and then I'll close. The final thing to make it really like a 3D is to add a bevel effect. So I'll go to bevel, and from here I can select one of the bevel effects that we have. So I can select this one, and that looks nice. I can move this one a little bit down. I can narrow it. I'm resizing it. So I just want it to appear below the balloons, and that's really nice. We finished creating our visualization. I represented the percentage of profit for each month by these different balloons flying in the sky. I can tell you without looking at numbers that the highest balloon for January represents the highest percentage of profit. But what we really want to do is not to look at our pivot table anymore, and I would like to be able to interact with my flying balloons by adding a graphic interactive filter that we call a slicer. And that will be our next step. Notice that I can move my flying balloon chart. I can cover everything with this flying balloon because I won't go back to my pivot table anymore. But for now, I need to make a selection inside the pivot table in order to reveal the Analyze tab and select the slicer. Click on the slicer. A slicer is a graphic interactive filter, and I would like to add two filters, one for the region and one for the sales rep, and then hit OK. My slicers being added. Let's deal with each one of these slicers one by one, and I would like to position my slicers to the left side of my flying balloon chart. Let's select the first one, and on the Options tab I'll be applying a style. Let's make this one, let's say, this green color, and it represents my regions. I have the different regions. To minimize the size of my slicer, on the Options tab, I'm going to split it into two columns by clicking on this pin button, and I'm splitting my regions into two. I can increase the size a little bit so that I don't get the vertical scroll bar. Let's format my second slicer, the sales rep. I'll be applying another style here. I'll be selecting a different one to differentiate it from the first one. And here I have some names. So I'll be splitting my slicer for the sales rep into three columns. I'll make it smaller. I don't want to see this vertical bar, so I'll expand it a few millimeters and then bring it below this one. And now I have my two slicers. What's the next step? The next step will be adding a timeline because I would like to filter my percentage of profit for each year, 2004, 2005, and so on. So I'll be selecting one cell in the pivot table one more time, go to the Analyze tab, and I'll be inserting a timeline. The timeline is simply a graphic filter for date and time values. And because I only have a date field to which a timeline can be applied, so it's the only one that I can see in this box, I selected it and then I hit OK, and here is my timeline. I'll be improving the appearance of my timeline, but from now on, I don't need to see the pivot table. I'll make some changes in my chart. I'll change the size of my chart a little bit. I'm making it a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to move it to the left side, covering my pivot table because I don't want to see the pivot table anymore. And here is my slicer. I'm repositioning everything in place, and I'll be repositioning as well my timeline. But it looks like I can make it even bigger. I'll drag it to the right, and I need to fill my entire screen. Now it looks much better. It's too big. I need to make it smaller, a little bit smaller. And now when I move to the left, I can see everything without having to scroll right and left, and I'm fine. I repositioned, resized my flying balloon chart. I have two slicers and I have a timeline. Let's format the timeline as well. When I select the timeline, clicking on the Options tab that pops up into the ribbon, I can be selecting a different color for the timeline. I'm applying a style for the timeline as well. So I selected this blue style, and that's fine. If you look in the upper right corner of the timeline, what you see here is the time level. I want to change the time level by clicking on the down arrow for month, and I want to switch to years. Now instead of viewing months, I could see years. But I have this label here, the selection label, and I have time level, and I have a scroll bar. I need a smaller timeline, so I have these options here represented on the right side of the Options tab. So I'll be deselecting the scroll bar, I'll be deselecting the time level, and I'll be deselecting the selection label, and now I could resize my timeline, and I can work with that. I'll bring it below the previous ones. The slicers, I can look at the size to make sure that they are exactly the same, but for now I'm going to adjust them just visually, and I can even increase the size of my chart so that I cover everything. I have my interactivity on the left side, and before testing it, I would like to add a frame that includes all my visual filters, my two slicers, and my timeline. I'll drag my timeline a little bit down. I'll be taking care of the alignment in few seconds, And let's go to the Insert tab of the ribbon, and let's insert a shape. I'll click on the down arrow for shapes. I'll select the rounded rectangle, and then click and drag to create a rounded rectangle a little bit bigger than the three filters, the graphic filters that I created. Of course, the curvature is not the best one, so I'm going to decrease the curvature by dragging from the yellow handle. This one controls the curvature, and I would like to change the fill color. I'll be selecting the dark blue color, and that looks nice. Let's add a shape effect by clicking on the down arrow for shape effect on the Format tab, and I'll go down to Bevel, and let's say I'll be selecting the soft round bevel effect, and that will look nice. This shape is covering the three filters, so let's move it backward by clicking on Send Backwards 3 times, and now I have my 3 shapes. Let's go and select them by clicking the Shift key to select all of them. And with all of them selected, on the Format tab, I'll click on the down arrow for Align, and I'll align center, and they are perfectly aligned right now. I need to deselect the outer shape, so I can press the Shift key and click on the outer shape to deselect it. And now I would like to adjust the vertical spacing, so I'll click on the Align command one more time and select Distribute Vertically, and I have my shapes perfectly aligned. We finished creating the flying balloon chart, and now we need to test the interactivity of our chart. How to test the interactivity? We created the functionality for doing that. I would like to analyze my sales or look at my sales for some of the regions. Let's say I would like to look at the North region only, and this will be the result for the North region. I can see the percentage of profit for the North region. I would like to look at the Midwest region, and here is the Midwest region. My flying balloons look nice. If I would like to focus on one of the sales rep, I can clear this filter by clicking on the funnel icon in the upper right corner, and from here I'll be selecting Chin, the either sales or the profit generated by Chin. If I want to add another sales rep, let's select Steven. This represents Chin and Steven. If you want to look at 2005, you click on the timeline, and we end up by creating the flying balloon. I'm going to release my filters, and this is not a chart. It's a piece of art. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next training video.